Welcome to the Body Paragraphs mini lesson. Hopefully you've already watched the introduction paragraph mini lesson, and now that we're into the body paragraph, we really want to think about how we're going to support that thesis statement. So let's use an analogy of the human body. So much like the human body holds all the vital organs and things you need for survival, the body of your essay is the guts of what you're trying to do. Your intro paragraph sets up your reasons, your conclusion wraps it all up, but the body paragraph is where you actually prove your thesis statement. Your intro paragraph was about 3 to 5 sentences because you're really not explaining or proving anything. Your body paragraphs are going to be much longer. They're generally about 5 to 8 sentences in length. So it should include a topic sentence that tells your audience what the paragraph will be about. So this will include some part of your thesis statement and one of your reasons, a specific supporting detail, an elaboration on your first detail, that's you explaining that supporting detail, and then you do it again. You have another specific supporting detail. You elaborate and explain that detail, tie it back to your thesis, and then you have a wrap-up or a concluding sentence. Let's take a look at an example. This is an example for Katniss Everdeen proving that she is a hero. And the reason for this one is about Katniss being selfless or putting the needs of others above her own. Katniss Everdeen demonstrates her heroism by putting the needs of others above her own. At the start of the story during the reaping, Katniss volunteers herself in place of her sister. Katniss volunteers without a moment's hesitation, showing that she wants to keep her sister safe at any cost. Even later in the story, her selflessness never wanes. Katniss pairs up with Rue, a character who reminds her of her sister. She is fiercely protective of Rue even after she dies. I can't stop looking at Rue, smaller than ever, a baby animal curled up in a nest of netting. I can't bring myself to leave her like this, past harm but utterly defenseless. Katniss does not care that she might be killed in the process. She puts the needs of Rue over her own. So if we look at this, we start with our topic sentence and our first reason. So we've restated our thesis statement about how Katniss is a hero. Then we come up with our first supporting detail. And in this example, we're coming up with an example or an event in the book. So it's Katniss volunteering in place of her sister. Then what really sets an essay apart from just a basic one for the writing SOL in 8th grade is elaborating on that detail. So we have to tie it back to our thesis statement. So this is when we do it. Katniss volunteers without a moment's hesitation, showing that she wants to keep her sister safe at any cost. We really just explain that detail and show how she's selfless in that way. Then we're transitioning to our second supporting detail. So even later in the story, her selflessness never wanes. Our next supporting detail is about how Katniss helps Rue. And we also include a quote for this one. We then have to elaborate and explain. So we show that she might be killed in the process. We're explaining how it's really dangerous, but she still puts the needs of Rue over her own. In this case, we didn't need a separate wrap-up sentence because we've tied in our last elaboration by tying it back to our overall thesis statement. You really don't want to forget the elaborator. Like I said on the last slide, that's really what's going to set your essay apart. So go ahead and pause the video and read the paragraph that we just read. This time it's without the elaboration. Okay, so if you notice, it really just reads like choppy supporting details, and you're forcing the reader to connect the dots rather than you, the writer, connecting them for you. You're coming up with great events, but you're not explaining them. And this happens a lot in 8th grade essays. So you really want to make sure you are elaborating and tying back your supporting details back to your thesis statement. Okay, let's look at another example. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and read the paragraph to yourself. Okay, welcome back. This essay is about 3 people that you would invite to a dinner party, so each body paragraph would be about a different person. It's very clear that I did not write this myself because it is about sports, and as you know, Mrs. Wickham knows nothing about sports. This paragraph's a little bit more basic. If you look at the first supporting detail, it talks about how Mr. Bean revolutionized the game of baseball by re-examining statistics. That's the supporting detail. Then the elaborator about how he'd bring an interesting perspective to conversation. It's really vague, but it is explaining that detail. And then we have that transition phrase. Another reason I would invite Mr. Bean is that he works in professional baseball. And then our elaboration here is a little bit more about how he's talked to different people and how he might bring interesting and entertaining stories. Okay? In this paragraph, we do actually have a separate wrap-up sentence. I think everyone at the party would enjoy in meeting and speaking with Mr. Bean. So This is a little bit basic, but it still gets the job done. What we don't want to say is, this is why I would invite Mr. Bean. That was a great strategy for a wrap-up sentence in 5th grade and in elementary school, but now you've grown as writers, and so you need to move beyond that wrap-up sentence. Okay, we're going to look at an example together. We're actually not going to write this one together, but now we're going to look at an example for an actual writing SOL prompt. So, civil rights leader Mahatma Gandhi wrote, "Be the change you want to see in the world. What is one way you would like to change the world, and how can you help bring about this change? Use specific details and examples in your response." So what I would have you do in class is actually highlight the question here. And the question is, what is one change you'd like to bring about in the world, and how you can help bring it about? It is not one important change and explain why. So it's really important that you look at the question closely. So you're talking about how you can bring about that change. So here's how you might turn that into a thesis statement. One way I would like to change the world, oops, there's that typo there. Change the world is blank. To make this happen, I would, and then you'd come up with 3 ways that you would do that. Okay, so let's take a look at an example that one class wrote together. One way I would change the world is that I would help people in need. So we're coming up with a general way that we would help people. With a question like this, you want to make sure that you're talking about something that you could actually explain. You're maybe not talking about ending world hunger because you might not know how to do that. So make sure you're talking about something general that you could help on an 8th grade school level. I could achieve this by collecting donations. And so now the whole paragraph is going to be about collecting donations. We could collect clothes, food, and other necessary items for people. Some people don't have the financial means to pay for these items, so it would really help others out. Imagine all the old clothes that you throw away. Rather than rotting in the garbage, it could go to a family in need. I know that when I have donated items, it got me thinking about other ways I could help people in need. Okay, and we've got some verb issues there, so we'd want to revise this last sentence, but otherwise we've got all our elaborators, we've got our wrap up there, everything that we need. Okay, let's look at another example. One way I would change the world is to end littering. If we reward people for picking up trash, they will be less likely to litter. For example, for every time someone litters at school and someone else picks it up, the teacher could give out a behavior or a reward card. Here we're referencing horse cards, but because the person reading your writing SOL essay is not going to know what that is, it's better to be more general, because a lot of schools do have that kind of policy. This will encourage students to be more mindful of their garbage. If we reward students when they're young, it will hopefully turn it into a lifelong habit. Now, as adults, these people will help solve littering together. So this last elaborator actually can function as a wrap-up sentence because we're referencing littering as a whole. And so you can do that as well at the ends of your paragraphs. All right, so I hope this lesson was helpful as you move and as we get closer to the writing SOL. Please let me know if you have any questions about body paragraphs in class.